In The Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk touches upon the subject of PTSD. In one instance, he refers to the case of a war veteran suffering from PTSD, who said that any sounds, smells or images that reminded him of the ambush made him feel just as paralysed, terrified and enraged as he did at the time. This is an example of trauma and how it can remain below the surface once it has happened and can resurface at any point. In this scene, we see the resurfacing of the traumatic history of Felix's native South Africa as he is looking at his reflection in the mirror. His image is slowly overcome by the face of Nadi, an African woman who we later find dies along with many other Africans. It is almost as if he has shaved his face off here and peeled back the layers of his mind to its core. This is where the memory of apartheid has been buried deep and can be found. It is here where the infection of the virus starts and his membrane is opened up and exposed to the virus. The virus now enters through his membrane and its contents flood the cell. Like the water he has splashed onto his reflection in this scene. The memories can now come flooding in, apartheid, the subject of Felix in exile. Felix drawing in this scene. He has been taken over. The infection of trauma is now in control and can reshape his mind's alarm systems. Just like how a virus will inject its DNA or RNA into a host cell and recode it, leading to its replication. The infection is now complete. Nadi's face has been revealed. The memory has flooded to the forefront of his consciousness and is no longer buried deep down. It has replicated and resurfaced out of his membrane. The virus can now continue its spread. While Nadi is coming into his vision in order to inform him of the happenings of their homeland, the question arises of, is she just a memory he is reliving, an alter ego he sees every time he revisits this memory? Is she just the virus entering his cell membrane and replicating within its nucleus? Referring back to the case of the war veteran in The Body Keeps the Score, we see how the memory of trauma can arise with a simple trigger like sound or smell. Could these triggers be the pathogens? What was it that Felix saw in his reflection that triggered this memory to arise? Because with every infection there is a root cause, a specific pathogen, and in this case a virus that has made its way into Felix's mind and reshaped his vision into its own. In these scenes, the pathogen is infecting, it is being made, it is being replicated. In breaking intergenerational cycles of repetition, Pamela Gabodo Medikazeli talks about the trauma passed down to a young generation of children as a result of necklace murders that took place in South Africa in the mid-1980s. It involved tyres being placed around the necks of the victims and then set on fire. Bystanders would dance and sing around them until they died. Gabodo Medikazeli goes on to talk about a reenactment of this by a group of young girls who are not alive during the time of these murders. She says how she witnessed one girl mocking the pain and the fear in a playful way, without ever having witnessed the actual event. Here, the dead bodies of African people are merging into the landscape. What once was has now mutated into a pathogen of different qualities. Watching this, I wonder, Does this represent the intergenerational trauma left behind in South Africa after apartheid? Have the unspoken memories of this trauma been reshaped into something more accessible, like it did for those girls written in the text by Gobodo Madikizela? The human experience of trauma. This type of virus has different strains. It is passed along, reshaped and mutated until the symptoms of infection differ to the first reported case. It is also important to consider how intergenerational trauma can be caused, and how the spread of the pathogen starts in the first place. As Van der Kolk mentions in The Body Keeps the Score, it is excruciating to face reality. But it is important, however, for the generations that come after the first blow of the trauma. When a pathogen is left undetected and ignored, it is able to replicate and further spread onto other hosts. These hosts may present symptoms in different ways, some being more subtle than others. These bodies, they have been left and ignored. The rubble has spread like an infectious disease around them, and all that's left is a contaminated matter that is a subtle, more accessible and less direct reminder of apartheid. Revisiting this scene, maybe it is not where the infection starts, but more where it ends, as the treatment of trauma starts with acknowledgement, just like how the phagocyte will recognise the antigens and engulf them. And it is here where Felix has acknowledged the trauma of apartheid. Furthermore, in The Body Keeps the Score, Van der Kolk mentions a number of ways in which the effects of trauma can be helped. Having a conversation with the trauma itself and allowing it to break through the membranes of our consciousness, it helps us to better understand it. By creating this 9-minute-long animation, Kendrick is having a conversation with his own personal experience of apartheid. He has acknowledged the presence of the virus. When trauma is treated, it is not linear. It involves learning just like how the immune system learns. The process that Kendrick uses in Felix in Exile, it is so revealing to the labour that went into it. The faded lines of charcoal, for example, they reveal the changes in the drawing and also the history of those changes, as each inshore leaves a snail trail of what has been. When dealing with intergenerational trauma, sometimes it is important to leave evidence of the past so that the way an individual or society may be in the present day can be better understood. Just like how the immune system will leave behind memory B cells that will remind it of the virus that it has fought off once before. So where does that leave us? After considering trauma as a matter of infectious qualities, I have started to not just see it as something to avoid, but also something to let in with open arms. The faded lines of Kendrick's work, they are rough, they are raw, and they are needed. In order for the trauma of apartheid to be understood, a trail must be left behind. A trail of facts that should not be forgotten, and a trail in which reveal the time and the journey of the healing of trauma. When it gets bad, we must have something to look back on in order to remember the ways in which we can deal with it and what works for us. Like pathogens, trauma is all around. It is unseen but always there. Trauma is the past, the present, and the future.